One of my slogans is, I go to bed smart and I wake up stupid.
Hello and welcome to the Jumpstart podcast with Jeffalytics. I'm your host, Jeff Sauer. Today, for our 27th episode, we will talk with Aaron Weiche, the Chief Marketing Officer at Get 5 Stars and the Vice President of MnSearch. Aaron is one of my oldest friends in the online marketing world, and we've been helping each other grow our careers for nearly a decade. So I'm honored to have the chance to share our friendship and Aaron's great story with all of you. What can I say about Aaron Weiche? First, he's among the most honest and ethical people I've ever come across. He always has a sunny disposition and never really gets too fired up, and he just does the things that he needs to do to succeed in life, growing 2 agencies exponentially, and then last year he joined a startup that already has 20,000 customers. But even more importantly, he has a lovely family that supports him every step of the way. Aaron is the definition of a good dude, and you might say I developed a bit of a man crush over the years. And yes, I just confessed to having a man crush on the podcast. Hopefully that doesn't cause me to lose any listeners. Anyway, listen along to hear about Aaron Weiche's journey. From selling one-page websites to the Chief Marketing Officer at Get 5 Stars, working for a company with a mission of helping small businesses manage their reputation and provide a better customer service experience to all of their customers. See, even his startup is down to earth. So I'll leave it there so Aaron can do the rest. Let's talk to Aaron Weiche. For show notes, visit jeffalytics.com/Weiche. Okay, so we're here today with Aaron Weiche. Aaron, thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you on here. You're one of my oldest friends in this industry, and so that's really cool, and probably the one that I know the best of anybody I've interviewed. So I'll try to keep it away from the inside jokes and more into all about you, learning about your progression in this industry.
Yeah, we've known each other long enough. I think we were both writing HTML on typewriters.
Yes, yeah. So obviously we've been in this for so long. Let's start with your beginning though. So what made you interested in this world of marketing and technology? What made you decide that this is a career for you?
Yeah, for me it was pretty much accidental. I was at a small company in the mid-90s, 96, 97, and I was the only one with an email address, which seemed really fancy and high-tech to them. And they decided they needed a page on the internet. I do long for the days when just having a page on the internet was enough representation for you. And they said, hey, put a page on the internet for us. So I went and tracked down a HTML book and put a page on the internet. And that was kind of the first initial piece that led to me being interested. And then it just so happened my dad had a small AM radio station, and he was pretty much wondering how to take advantage of the web. And so I worked with his engineer to stream the radio station online and built the radio station a website. And then from there it just kind of progressed where all of his friends and advertisers and everything else were, also trying to figure this out and also needed a page on the internet, and just started building very, very small and simple websites. And that was the beginning. I was hooked. I loved just being able to, create things on the fly. And I had a good eye for just, simplistic design and getting the facts across for their business. And yeah, you could sit down in a night and make something that was instantly accessible to, hundreds and thousands of people. I was hooked.
That's awesome. So what was your role in the first job where they said put something on the internet? Were you in sales? Were you just like why did you have an email address and nobody else did?
I was in sales, and I had it just from a communication standpoint, and I wasn't even a monster like user of the web or super hooked. I remember, some of my first introductions into like AOL chat rooms and things like that, and I was kind of like, yeah, it's okay and whatever else, but I was in my young 20s and there was way more things to do, like playing basketball and going around the lakes in Minneapolis, and I was living in Uptown and whatever else. So I really wasn't hooked on it as a user. It definitely wasn't until I saw that I could, make things and create things with it that got me really interested.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so you basically go from like being able to put a web page on a site, and then now it's a business for you. It sounds like people are asking you to do it, and there's this like maybe you don't really know like how it works. You don't really know, like you weren't classically trained in this area, but you knew enough that you could put something on the internet, and people were like, okay, well, if you can do that, then we want you, we want you to help us out. And so, do you turn that into a business, or how did that part progress?
Yeah, so, just started, figuring out how to put a short and simple one-page quote together and tell them this is what I'll give you and what I'll put together, and just kind of, stumbled my way through the process of, getting to know and understanding their business. And the one thing that I learned really quickly that I've always kept with me and still do it today is just really being an advocate for the consumer. I tried to approach everything when I was working and building something for them as like, you know your business inside and out, but you're also too close to it. So let me help you with, your messaging, both, in words and visually to, convey what your customers or potential customers are actually looking for and what they think it's about. So, started building a handful of those. And then as things progressed and they, people are like, okay, can it do this, right? Something a little bit more interactive and whatever. And I had to pick up a book learning to write Perl. And at that point, I realized I wasn't going to be a world-class developer. It was painful, and I was able to make it work for that project. But I was like, man, I do not want to be doing this part of it. So I started researching. This is probably early 2000s then. I had, 30 to 50 small business website clients, and I was just all on my own and was primarily, things for like a CMS. I was using like Microsoft Front Page. And so started researching and then ended up finding, randomly enough, some guys in Delano, right? And I grew up in Buffalo. I was still living in the cities at the time, but here's this other small town not very far from where I was from. And these guys had built a server-side CMS, and it kind of blew my mind. They had this little online demo, and it was, pages and modules, and they had this great demo that was built around a Caddyshack was all the dummy content for it. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. So I basically, went to them, and we worked out an agreement for me to transfer my clients in, them basically buying the clients that I had. And I started going to work for them in the early 2000s and selling websites, and that's when we formed that company. Was called 5 Technology, and I handled the front end and got really interested in search marketing more than anything, because the evolution was kind of like, okay, now that you have something and you want to be able to control it, and you want to make sure a lot of people can see it. So really just got in a lot to the CMS platform we had, and search marketing really took off at that point for me.
Yeah. Okay. So that's cool. I mean, I think that's when you and I met, was when you were at 5 Technology, and I sort of, that's how I found you. You obviously, the search marketing piece was working because you were very findable, and your company was very findable. But going back to this whole part of like the voice of the user, how did you arrive on that these websites needed to be made for people, in the voice that the person who's searching? I mean, that's pretty, like, most people don't discover that right away when they're working on websites. It's really, let's just get the website up there and talk about yourselves. How did that process work? Did you read books on it, or did you just sort of intuitively know that that's who you need to design for?
Yeah, I mean, it was mostly intuitive, and I want to credit, both my parents owned and operated small business. I already, mentioned my dad owned a small radio station. My mom had a custom framing and art gallery. So I was around like this, small business board meeting was at our dinner table every single night. At the height of my dad's radio station, it was probably a 15 to 20 employee place. And, my mom was, super small, 1-2 part-time employees and whatever else. But I heard the things that they dealt with and whatever. And I definitely got a great marketing angle from my dad, right? I'd tag along to, remote broadcasts where they'd be on scene and pumping up whatever is going on with the farm and garden supply store or the car dealership or whatever else. Mm-hmm. So I was definitely able to be around some of those elements, and I watched my dad, write commercials and record commercials, and every now and then when they needed a kid voice, they'd throw me in there, and I'd get to cut a commercial, which I thought was, amazingly fantastic at the time. So I think it was kind of the combination of all those things, and then it just was, as you said, like it was just intuitive to me that was the plain English version that people wanted to know and understand. And I quickly realized a lot of times as business owners, we overcomplicate what we do because we know it just so in depth and we're so intimate with it that our customer really isn't. And they're coming to us with just one single problem. And they want to find out, can you help solve this problem?
Absolutely. I think everybody listening should know that that's the way that you get people to buy what you're into, is solving problems for them, not for the business owner, on the web especially. But the greater question here is, do you have recordings of your kid voice from the radio commercials, and can we put them as an intro to this podcast episode?
Man, possibly around there. They are, those are still alive somewhere, but hopefully very unfindable, untraceable.
Yeah, we'll see. I'll see if the Smithsonian has copies.
Nice. I will tell you that. I mean, there's a classic example. I was reading scripts there written on a typewriter, right?
Yeah. And so, as you're going through that with the websites, what was the measurement strategy back then? Was there such a thing? Did people even care, or was it just like anecdotal? If the phone rings, they think it's due to the website, or did they not even know?
It was a measure of like self-pride. Can I pull this up myself and see my business and get really excited about it, even though no one else might be viewing it? That was a big part early on. It was, just the accessibility, letting people know you were out there. And I would definitely hear about it when a business owner would be like, man, I just got a call about this from this place or whatever else. And they'd, you'd start to see those early signs of, geography not even being important sometimes for like a product or a very specific niche service and things like that, where, it used to be like, well, you were in that regional phone book and that's who you found. And, nobody was going to have a phone book from 4 counties away. So they weren't going to find you for this, even if it was a huge specialty that you might serve statewide. So definitely some of those pieces. It wasn't until, and I wish I had a date on it, but, my first introduction to analytics was Urchin, right? And for those that don't know, Urchin is what Google Analytics bought. But when I came across Urchin, and it's something we folded into, to compress this, that the server-side CMS that we had at 5 Technology, we built that into kind of what we called a managed service, right? It's like, we'll build you a website, we'll host it, we'll be there to help you, train you how to use the CMS. And when you have questions, we'll answer them for you. And we have an analytics package with it. And Urchin was that. And it was fabulous. It was one of like the top 3 reasons that I, sold us in, why you want to use us, because Urchin gave that visibility that, yes, things like, AW stats and whatever else existed, but it was just so much data and so poorly displayed, and just, again, you had to be like a data scientist to really understand it or care. And Urchin was the first one to put a better interface over the top of it and break some things down into segments that you actually cared about. Like, back then you could see what keywords were coming to your site and things like that. So, that was when I got into the like analytical side and really just, started loving like, wow, there's a story here to like how people found you and where they came in and what they're engaging with and what they're doing on your site.
Yeah. It seems like that really is the time when people started asking the questions too. So having analytics to answer those questions is really important. And what I mean by that is like having a website was good enough until like 2002, right? Like that was just enough. And for some companies, I think today they just think a website's enough. But people started to ask questions about, how do I get people to go there? How do I make this a 10x impact on my business, as opposed to just sort of being a expense item? And so did people start coming at you with that, or did you lead with it and say, hey, we can treat this like a moneymaker? Or how did that part work? And do you know around the time frame when that progression happened?
Yeah, so probably that same 2003 to 2005 window, and it became something I led with. I've always taken the point of, and I think it just came naturally to me, to be more of an education-based sales kind of person. I wasn't going to twist your arm. I wasn't going to sell fear or whatever else. I was looking at like, let me teach you about this and how it works. And then, you can make an informed decision if you want to do this. And what it really allowed me to do is just tell them like, hey, you're doing marketing now, but you don't have the full story. And with this, you do have the full story. So I would make all kinds of analogies and and comparisons and, different scenarios between traditional marketing that all these businesses were doing, whether it was in a trade publication or the local paper or a billboard, and then, give them a digital comparison, right? I would tell them a story like, hey, what if you had a billboard on the highway and at the end of the day, the billboard called you and said 782 cars drove by and 4 actually pulled over and wrote down your phone number and whatever else. They'd be like, oh, that's awesome. I'm like, well, this is what a website with analytics can do. So, just making easy kind of tie-ins like that and being able to speak in their language and then tie it into some of the smarter things they could do. I had a blast doing that and opening people's eyes to, how to utilize those elements.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where I first got introduced to you, is that you were doing, back then, you had to explain to people what a search engine was and why search engines are so important and why they're so popular and why there's so much volume out there. And that really became the platform for creating this awareness, because there was basically no awareness at this time of how important these things were.
Yeah, and that, even if you did gain some interest, I mean, what you did consume was just super confusing, right? It's the beauty of the internet. You can find 10 different takes on what people think or how you should approach it. And if you don't know how to decipher it, then you just end up almost even more confused, because you might have competing things on what someone or what people are telling you. So yeah, I really just looked at okay, I've gone through some of these same tormenting processes and trying to figure out and looking to others for help and trying to find examples of stuff. And as I was doing it more and more and knew for myself, what actually worked and what was seeing success, it was okay, how can I fold these into, stories that, that an average marketer and business owner can consume and make sense of. And that led to a lot of that. And then I really enjoyed, talking, and still do this day, how can I help people kind of have light bulb moments where it isn't so much about teaching them something that is just, rocket science or groundbreaking, but, can you give them a common understanding that they didn't have before, where the light bulb goes on and it's oh, now I understand it. Because if you don't understand it, you definitely can't leverage it. So that's always been, comprehension has been behind, just about anything I've ever tried to do as far as, speaking and teaching and helping from that aspect.
Yeah, and I think that's obviously that. I don't want to jump too far ahead, but that's continued on with your education and doing the tour with the local university and being involved with that type of stuff. I think that was the first time I ever heard of you. Was either at seeing you speak somewhere, or I went to the local. What was it? localu.org, I think it was, and to see who was the consultants for local SEO and Five Technology and Aaron Weiche were on there. And so that's where I was like, who is this guy?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think I started reading your blog and I was like, wow, this guy's saying some cool stuff. He's saying the same thing on his blog that I say in hallway conversations at my agency. And it was sort of cool. You had this voice out there. Even before I started putting myself out there, you were doing this stuff and doing it really well in our local area and nationally as well.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's talk about that. So you were at Five, and you're basically the advocate of the local business and the business, trying to get them to get interested in the web, trying to tell them that search engines can make them get more traffic, being able to measure what's going on. Any other breakthroughs there? I know you guys got into mobile before anybody else. What else were you doing there and in that time frame?
Yeah, a lot of it was just really, I guess, taking a holistic approach to a business's marketing and what you could do with the web that no other medium allowed you to do. Early on, I definitely figured out and kind of playing around with blogging myself and a number of different things, I really adopted the view of, how do you turn your business or even your own brand into an aquarium, right? And what I mean by this is how do you make sure the walls around you are glass so everyone can see in and see what you're doing and understand what your expertise is and what you live and eat and breathe and sleep, and blogs became, blogging and putting your thoughts out there and doing small case studies and research and things like that, definitely led to that early on for me. I make jokes all the time, right? When I speak at some conferences, like the earliest form of social media was blog commenting, and you would comment on a blog and then you would hit refresh in 30 seconds to see if someone replied to your comment on that post or someone else commented. And I mean, you die laughing when you think about that now. It sounds so unbelievably archaic. It's like when my kids see a rotary phone and they don't have any idea what that is either. But you didn't have, push notifications and everything on your phone and everything else. So that's what I really liked about those pieces, and that that kind of arrived for me. And then I feel like it's just really good time. I'm so grateful that like social media hit at the time when it did, because it was when I really had figured out for myself what was going to work well, and this, aquarium type view on things and whatever else. And then boom, hey, here's Twitter and here's Facebook and here's ways you can share that with more people in real time, easier, and everything else. And I feel like that it really helped accelerate everything I was doing, because none of it had to live in a vacuum. I was able to acquire a larger audience and more people seeing and understanding what you were doing. The local youth speaking series is a perfect example of that, right? Like that was started by David Mim, who built a product to help local businesses look up their, name and data and all these different directories by just plugging in your info once, and it would check all the directories for you and tell you if things were listed right or wrong. And that factored into, a core element of how local search worked in Google at the time and everything else. And David was out in Portland, and thanks to Twitter, he came across where I was tweeting about some of the web designs we were putting out. And I'd built a website for a local chamber of commerce, and it caught David's eye because it was really well designed and had a number of elements that were very search friendly for small businesses. And next thing I know, he's referring some web design work for me. And, David's was known already on a, national scale. And now, he's since sold that tool into Moz, and it became Moz Local. And he's just extremely brilliant, wildly successful. If it wasn't for Twitter, I never would have met and interacted with the guy. And that led to him extending the offer for me to speak at Local U, and then allowing me to bring it to the Twin Cities. And, all that started 6-7 years ago. So amazing how that progression happened. And to me, it just like I had the fire going, but that absolutely was the fuel I needed to get it to burn brighter and hotter.
Yeah, no, that's interesting, because I think that you're right. Social media is something where if your first introduction to marketing was in the social media era, you thought that it was this new thing. You thought that it was something that really it was unlike anything else. It was so unique. Social media, I can do social media. I'm good. And I always like to say that social media was like the website design of the late 90s. Social media in the late 2000s was basically that. Like, just because you were new to the game, it seemed like you had this competitive advantage because you could do these things. But your approach, it seems like, is really how I approached it, and that is, this is just an easier way of doing the stuff I've already done. It's an easier way of doing blog comments. It's an easier way of keeping up with things than RSS. It's basically like it's a channel. It's not like an entirely different way of doing things. It's just a different channel that's out there. Yep. And it seems like that's really, how some of the more old school people approach it is like, okay, this is a new channel. I got to understand it and see how it does things, but it's very similar to these old ones. So maybe my strategy there, tweak it a little bit and then make it fit into this area. And the beauty of it at first, right? It was everything was one-to-one connections. I mean, no one that was following you on Twitter when you first started was a bot or spam or anything else. So everything, I mean, it was just tons of conversations and very authentic. And it was, really a facilitator. And I met all kinds of people in real life just after like connecting on Twitter and be like, hey, you say a lot of great things. You're a smart person. Love to see what you're up to. Like, let's, grab coffee or meet up or whatever else, or I'll be in your town for a conference. Let's try to connect in real life. And, just like anything else, right? Once we have this wonderful tool and personal connections, then in the marketing world, we find a way to spam it and scale it and wreck it and everything else. And still extremely, extremely valuable, but it didn't, it just won't ever compare to when it was 99% authentic. No, it's probably about 9% authentic.
But I agree, man.
Just really, really interesting. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's Twitter in 2008 or 9 or whatever. That's how I ended up meeting Mark Cuban because somebody just said, "Hey, Cuban, we're at this restaurant or this bar. Come over." And he did.
Yeah.
And I don't think you could do that in this time. It'd be a little bit harder to get through to somebody. But a lot of, yeah, I mean, same thing. I helped Rand Fishkin fix his blog. Remember that? You always remember the story. You always make fun of me for it. But basically, he was on Twitter like, "Does anybody know WordPress?" And I was like, "Yeah, I know WordPress." It was like a Friday night. I don't know why I was sitting at my computer reading Twitter.
You were like, "I taught Matt Mullenweg WordPress. What do you mean?"
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So I fix his blog by the end of the weekend, and then we've become friends ever since. But and he's our first podcast guest. But I bet you that if I would have tried to create a relationship with him, 8 years later, it would have been a lot more difficult because he has 100 people trying to get at him now versus back when, like, the novelty of Twitter, you could actually have a one-to-one type conversation with somebody, like you said.
Absolutely.
That's really cool. So, obviously you were doing the web design, and it sounds like web design was the primary income generator, but then these other services are what differentiated you as a web company. Instead of just only having a website, now you can have a website with search, with analytics, with these other packages. And then you went on to a more traditional digital agency at Spidertrap. And I know I'm sure I don't know if you don't need to talk about the transition, but I remember texting you the day after I heard that you went there, and I said, I didn't even know that was an option. I would have hired you 10 years ago, or as soon as I could. So how was the transition from like a web design agency to a more full service digital agency? Yeah.
So, I mean, interesting enough, same story there. Mike Reinchek, who founded Spidertrap, he and I became friends via Twitter, and I think met in person at a couple of the social media breakfasts. And at that time, Spidertrap was only doing search and social. And so I had a couple of doors I had knocked on that social was an easy way to get in because it was, so hot, especially like, social listening and things like that. So I tapped Mike and Spidertrap to help me on some social stuff. And then they were like, well, we have some people who want to build websites. Can you help us quote some of those things? And so we had some partner projects and whatever else. And Mike and I just kind of, talked a little bit, and I could see, they were about a year and a half old to 2 years old, and I could see, where they were going and progressing and whatever else. And it was probably the hardest decision I'd ever made because Five Technology was my baby, and I had a handful of partners there and liked everyone a lot. And the simplest thing that it just came down to is I saw a growth opportunity with Spidertrap that I didn't think Five Tech would had. I felt like my partners were very happy in a lifestyle business, and at that time, I was in my young 30s and still super hungry to grow and see how far I could take something. And it just ended up being where Spidertrap felt like that right opportunity. So, yeah, making the jump over there, and we really, worked well together and put in a lot of, as the agency world, it can be a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. Won a lot of great opportunities, built a lot of great things, and it was fabulous. I was there for about 6 years, and when I started, I think I was body number 6 in the door and whatever else. And when I left, we were above the 40 employee mark, and revenue was about 6-7 times higher. So
wow.
It was great, and it was a lot of fun, and I learned a ton professionally, and also a lot about myself just from both the challenges and the pains in growing a business fast and big, at least big for me in my experience.
Yeah, no, it was cool, man, to see it happen because, well, first of all, when we, our agency was a little bit bigger, but we had, I guess we can call it rival agencies, but even though it's all co-opetition at this point, right? But I had 3 Deep and you had Spidertrap, and it was like basically like Spidertrap had just drafted LeBron James to their team, and it was sort of wild to see that. But then just to see the transformation of the business based on you bringing clarity to like what is our service offerings, and also, I mean, mobile was a big thing for you guys, right? Like you were on the responsive design kick, you were doing all kinds of cool mobile stuff and just all kinds of awesome things there.
Yeah, thanks. That part was really, really fun. And I'm lucky that, Mike Mike trusted me with a lot of the things that I saw coming down the line, and we put a lot of stock into that. Because I mean, when I showed up at Spidertrap, we had one developer and no designers, and when I left last year, I think the development team was around 10 to 12 developers and 3 or 4 creatives. And man, those guys just, I can't say enough about the team that was there. They just do fantastic work. I just had so much fun building projects for them that, you know, one might be an app for that a doctor would use. Another is an app a farmer would use to sell their grain. I mean, just such a wide range of products. But we really carved out, and yeah, we doubled down on mobile very early, just because whenever it was when I had my Treo 755 and you can actually, you know, start browsing websites to a certain degree, you know, it really caught my eye, and I started seeing like, oh, there's just, you know, we're starting to evolve to the computer in your hand. And then obviously the iPhone completely changed that game, and then you could see where things were headed from there. And yeah, initially started building separate mobile sites all the time, right? You'd build an M.dot version or a /mobile version and build that out. But the minute I caught wind of responsive, I was just like, okay, you know, this other one, it's like you're making 2 different versions and it's doubling your work, and all these things are going against principles I've always looked at, like the web should make things easier for you. So when I, you know, caught wind about responsive, I can't remember if it was at a conference or just reading, you know, way too many blog posts in one day or whatever. I was like, you know, boom, this is it. And there was negative and whatever, like, oh, you know, because of all the code, it loads slower and everything else. And I was just like, I'm not going to worry. Everything we make continues to get faster. Internet connections faster, browsers get faster, devices get faster. I'm like, I'm not going to be scared off because people are saying the speed. Like, we're solving that from 12 different angles, but no one else is solving from like, just build one site, one consistent site. And then it makes your life a lot easier when you start to, you know, a couple of years ago when Google's like, this is our preferred method that we want to see. If you want to rank well, you know, you'd be best to use this type of development approach to what's there.
Yeah. And you're like, yep, we're already doing that.
Yes, it was sweet. It's nice when you have things when Google says stuff and you don't have to redo what you've been doing, and more like, yes, that supports what we've been doing. Thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think there's no better way to go than to have, you know, to be on the cutting edge, because that they're never going to recommend the old technology. They're never going to say, oh, the old way. We're going to go back to the old way. Maybe sometimes they do, but for the most part, it's moving forward, right? It's progress.
Well, I'm ready for it. If they come back and say you should have just one page on the internet, I'm in.
Yeah, because that was really going back to your roots, right?
Exactly. Like, I can craft a one-pager like nobody's business, so I'm all in if that simplification happens. But
I think there's a whole slew of people who can pitch you that service from many different nations as well.
Now we're more into the affinity. I mean, why even count pages anymore? It really doesn't have anything to do with it. It's just, can you do everything? Can your customer do everything that they need to do? And can you do everything you need to do to run your business?
Exactly. Can you anticipate what they're looking for and present it in a way that they can get there? And that's still a challenge, right? I mean, ultimately, the thing that never went away from when you talked about this the first time is, how do you organize this information for them? Like, in a way, I almost went and did like the Google thing. Their mission is to organize the world's information and turn it into something universally useful and accessible.
Yep.
I almost said that, but that's really what like a website owner or somebody in the services industry needs to do still. I mean, that's the thing. How do we organize this in a way that makes sense for everybody? Yep. That's what it comes down to. And I think that might be a good transition into like what you're doing now. So obviously you helped build, you built your own company, and then you helped build 2 more companies into something super prominent and like growing revenue and, doing business development and creating new business lines. I mean, it's really impressive. And then now what are you doing?
Yeah, so now I'm with a product for the first time in my life after, roughly about 18 years of agency life or client vendor services. We have a product that really focuses on customer feedback and online reviews. So our company is called Get 5 Stars, and it's really meant to help enable businesses to be proactive in asking their customers for feedback about their experiences with them, and then channeling them into different routes based on their experience. If it's a happy customer, we want to understand what what they loved about what happened, and then push them on to possibly write an online review, because that is so important for many businesses in acquiring customers by what their brand and online reputation is. And if it's a bad experience, we want to give that business owner a chance to, reconcile with that customer, figure out what went wrong, and contact them, and try to turn it back around so they can keep that customer, because as we all know, it costs X amount of times more to acquire a customer than it does to keep one.
Absolutely. And so it's a cool business idea, obviously, and I think that it's obviously going really well for you too. How did you get involved with it? How did you, how does all of this work from a career standpoint? What made you make the decision? How did you jump on board? How big is the company?
Yeah, so
give us some more details.
I'll try to answer all 14 of those questions in order. The two co-founders, Don Campbell and Mike Blumenthal, I have known from speaking and connections and whatever else. And especially Mike Blumenthal has been a thought leader in the local search space. He's been blogging, but I think sometimes that guy writes like articles in his sleep, right? He's written thousands of articles, and he's pretty much known as the most authoritative global person on local search and Google Maps. And getting to be around Mike, he's somebody that, I'd basically say he's almost like a father figure to me in the industry. He's a little older and a little wiser, and just has a great approach, and just understands things and breaks down complexities, but still has this great, he was a small business owner himself in the 80s and 90s. So he has this great fundamental understanding of what it takes to run a great business. And so they started this product, and at a couple of different points in time, because Mike would always keep me up to breast with what was going on with it and have me look at it, and, might give a few tips and whatever else. And then I just started kind of getting more interested. And when I was at a point where I knew I wanted to make a transition, and just kind of felt like I had run my course in the agency world, and I started looking at a few different products or platforms or things wired a little bit differently to do next. Get 5 Stars was one that really stood out to me, because I had, a high comfort level and trust factor with Don and Mike. And then I really liked the direction of it, and the product itself just hit upon something that has held true for me the entire time. I mean, the two of the biggest reasons that I've been in the online marketing and the internet world for so long is, one, it's never ending, right? One of my slogans is, I go to bed smart and I wake up stupid. The industry always evolves, and you always have to learn and push yourself if you want to excel at it and everything else. And the second is, I've never ever sold anyone an SEO campaign or an e-commerce site or a custom website or a mobile app or anything else, and felt like that was a waste of their money. They shouldn't have done that. I've never felt that once in hundreds, if not thousands of projects that I've sold. I've known, like, when you do this and you do it right, it contributes and grows that business. So I felt like Get 5 Stars totally embodied those same things. Like, every business at the end of the day, no matter if it's online, offline, whatever it is, like, you need to understand how your customers feel about you. Are they going to refer you by word of mouth? Are they going to write an online review? Are they going to give you feedback? Like that, it's a business fundamental, the way I see it. And so that was really attractive to me, that I wasn't going to work on something that, it might be exciting to, be a flash in the pan, the next, Snapchat or the next mobile payment system or whatever else. But this is rooted into something that's tied into every single successful business, is understanding how their customers perceive them and, doing something with it.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. And I'm curious. Well, first of all, I like the ethics that you display as well. I mean, that's something I've admired all throughout this whole thing, is you're in it for the long game, not in it for a quick buck or anything like that. You're like, you want to build something that's long lasting and that you feel proud of. And I think that's a testament that you've been able to do that. I should add to that.
I mean, I really feel like if I had to bolt down the keys to my success, and granted, I say the term success, right? I'm not Mark Cuban. I'm not Gary Vaynerchuk. I'm not, all these others that have reached an unbelievable scale. But, I feel really good about the things I've achieved, and quality is one of those, just pillars that I've always built upon, right? As I I'm thinking your audience is a little bit older, so I'll just use my layman terms. I've always had a higher shit filter than other people. I'm not willing to settle for a crappy design or poorly written content or something that kind of works or whatever else. I've always pushed for it, and to me, that's always shown up in the results it gets, or what the shelf life is, right? I look at web design. You have these trends, right, that are super trendy for drop shadows and flat design and everything else, and these things come and go, and it can be really hard on a business when they design to trends, and within 2 years they feel like their website looks so 2 years ago, and everything else. So I've always tried to build sites that I still know there's small business websites that are out there today that I built 10 years ago that nobody pull up and be like, oh my gosh, when did this happen? Right? Was this built on GeoCities or Angel Fire? They stand the test of time because I cared about quality when we first put them together. So that was one major core element to me. And then just the other one is hustle. I've always been willing to do the work, to learn. You just can't even, and that's the beauty about the internet. There's as much knowledge out there as you want to bring in and you want to consume. So I've always done a good job of positioning myself to constantly learn. Yes, I might have some great expertise on things, but that doesn't mean I shouldn't listen to what another expert has to say and be open to what their approach or their take or what they do and everything else. So, that attention to quality and just a burning desire to always, hustle and work hard are the two things that have afforded me a lot of great opportunities.
Yeah, and I'd say adaptability too, because I've interviewed a lot of people, and I almost always can lump them into a bucket, right? Like they're the PPC person or they're the analytics person, and that's how they want to position themselves, and that's what they want to be. But it seems like you've been able to make a transition from web guy to sales guy to local search guy, and that's still where you're doing a lot of speaking, to mobile guy, to many different areas, and be able to do them all really well. And I think what you said is the waking up or going to bed smart, waking up stupid is a great way to put it. Is like if you truly believe in that, then you need to understand how all these things fit together and why they're important to do it right, and what doing it right actually means. Yep. Both doing right for your customer, but then also doing right for the internet and for this whole online world.
And man, has it gotten a lot harder. There's one more thing every day you have to understand about, right? When you started out, it was like, just know some HTML and some Photoshop and you're good.
Yep.
And now it's like,
I know for sure, man.
Now you have to have 80 tools in your arsenal. But yeah, to that point, I've just always looked at it. There's, a number of things where, I would love to be deeper, but I know at the end of the day, I need to get to a good enough level. And I really look at it. I've more accepted the role of how can I be a great translator, right? How can I translate what technology is to the customer, or what search engine optimization or the domain authority is to the customer, and help them understand it, why they want to invest in it, or make something happen with it. And then internally with teams too, like, what is quality? Why do we want to build something that adheres to this, or has room to scale or grow into this, or provides this amount of reliability, or make sure we're connecting and making it a great user experience so they can flow through it the right way. So, being able to translate those agendas and connect those dots and help people understand it has both been really fun and rewarding, but it's the challenge that keeps me in it all the time.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So
I should answer for you too. Okay. I don't think I got through all 14 of the questions. A couple other things regarding Get 5 stars. So we're a under 10-person company right now. We're hiring another engineer right now, which is fantastic. That's a success growth thing. Our business model is based off of locations. It's in our structure and how we serve organizations. That's kind of our measurement of success, by how many locations we have on the platform. So, and as you can imagine, one of our customers might be it's a single location. It's a mom and pop heating and air conditioning business, and then another one of our clients might be a 50 location restaurant. So all in all, right now we're approaching about 20,000 locations globally on the platform, and I feel like we're maybe only a third third or a quarter of the way of where we can be in the next couple of years. We have a really great feature set. Our roadmap for, additions within the platform is well planned out for the next 7 to 8 months. We have a lot of very successful customers, all the way up to like a Fortune 100 company, and we're really hitting our stride with like small to medium sized franchises. So these might be 50 to 800 location places that need a customer feedback platform that they can easily implement and get up and running, and then also helps influence their online reputation and helps then in turn influence their local search rankings and visibility as well through online reviews. So we have a really nice, compact, kind of all-in-one solution where there's plenty of things in the marketplace that will help you get customer feedback and net promoter score and things like that, which we utilize. And then there's plenty of solutions that are just for online reviews. And what we wanted to do is really provide a tool full of value that you can kind of customize and conform and make it work the way you want it. But it gives you, customer service feedback, net promoter score, helps you identify situations you need to do something about, helps procure testimonials and content you can use in your marketing, and helps you get more online reviews and monitor online reviews so you know about the new ones that are popping up on Google and Yelp and Facebook.
Mm-hmm. And does it only work for companies with a physical address, or could others use it as well?
We have some product companies that use it. We have e-commerce sites that use it. Smaller e-commerce sites will use it just for brand reputation. They're not interested in, a review on every single product of their site. They just one way or another, they can't afford to be Amazon and have, 500 reviews on every single product. But they definitely want their site to have a great reputation and allow people to see that hundreds of others have ordered from them and it was a great experience and it was delivered on time and the product was as expected and everything else. And then, we have a lot of, software companies that either provide like payroll services or some type of other online service that, use it in that same way where, they want to understand their customers' feedback and they want to be able to display positive testimonials and a rating scale from their customers on their own website. And you can place feedback links on your website and allow a user that, a lot of times isn't happy. We offer a way that instead of them running to Yelp or Facebook or Google and, wanting to burn you at the stake and being upset, a lot of times that's because they've already tried another route, like going to your website and looking for somewhere to give feedback. And that's something like, it amazes me how few of sites actually have a link, a button, anything that says, give us feedback. And especially in industries like a restaurant, like I would put that front and center, like do anything I can to keep people from complaining where everyone can hear it. I'll give you an easy channel. Tell me first so I can try to do something about it, because most negative online reviews are just a result of not only the situation being bad, but it wasn't easy to remedy it or nobody made the effort to, turn it around.
Yep, exactly. Yep. And people don't really know what they don't know. And so this helps you get there.
Yep.
So what did you not know when it came to running an agency that you wish you knew?
The biggest thing that I gained education on at Spidertrap was just kind of the political environment of larger corporations. And when you start working with larger, Fortune 100 companies and things like that, it's super valuable to me right now because those are some of the types of clients that we're starting to get into at Get 5 Stars. And a majority of the rest of our team don't have experience in those areas. And I'm able to scale us back and be like, okay, here's how we have to navigate this a little bit different. You need to understand the stakeholders, where blame's going to fall when things go on, how important clear communication that all of the stakeholders have in this, and approvals and things like that. So that was one thing that was it was a harsh education because it was rough on me to learn those things, but definitely one I learned a lot about.
Yeah, exactly. So what did you think would be really scary about this journey, but ended up being a lot easier than you thought?
I would have to say probably like self-doubt. Like when you get in the beginning and it's really hard to confirm what you know or what you think or what you feel. And you have this, initially I was just so afraid I didn't know anything at all.
Describe a difficult professional situation and how you were able to overcome it.
Transition from 5Tech to Spidertrap was really hard. It was one of those where most of the times in my life, I've seen clearly what my next step or been really clear cut on the opportunity I have and how I should take it. And it was a very instant, like, yep, this is right. And I'm going for it. That was one where I just I slept on it for 2 to 3 weeks and still never woke up with like that right answer. And I really had to work hard to boil it down to like, what is the one biggest factor? And, as I finally arrived at by simplifying it all the way down to, growth potential. I guess if I look at it holistically, like problem solving is definitely a skill of mine. And in that case, I had to solve my own problem and I needed to use, simplicity to do it. So that's how I was able to overcome it.
Yeah. How much time should somebody spend on their personal brand?
I guess endless. Like everything you do is a representation of your personal brand. You're representing yourself all the time. So, you should be having that in mind and considering those things all the time. I think it's a key thing that you can subtly be doing in everything you're doing. It all ends up attributing itself to your reputation and to who knows you and who's going to recommend you and what people think of you and everything else. So I think it's important to keep in the back of your head with every single thing you do. You only have one reputation.
Absolutely. And the last one, what advice do you have for a new marketer just getting into this area?
Yeah, so one tagline that I've used heavily throughout my career and put on to employees and managers underneath me and everything else is the statement of be remarkable or be replaceable. So take that as you will, but for a new marketer, like the things that we've been talking about in this, and this is what's worked for me, and you should seek other sources and find out what's worked for them and find the right recipe that works for you, but hustle, care about quality more than anything else. Care about, your own quality. You have to answer to yourself at the end of the day. So while it's great to say like, hey, we did good enough. The client said it's good, so that's good enough. Is there something inside of you that's burning that's saying like, man, we could have done a little bit more. I could have researched this a little bit more. I could have looked a little further. I could have tried to reach out to someone who really knows a ton on this and see if I could pick their brain about it. So that would be my advice is like, look at everything you touch and work on as an opportunity to be remarkable. Because I truly believe if you don't, someone else is going to. They're either going to take your job from you or that client's going to fire you, or someone's going to lose faith that, you can do the job to your best ability, and someone else with a lot of hustle and the ambition to be remarkable is going to lap you.
Couldn't agree more. I think that's a good note to leave us on. As people probably know listening, Aaron and I have been friends for a while, so it was really fun to do an interview with a friend, and we'll see if we have to edit out the swear words or if we're going to keep them in there. But we'll do our best. So thanks, Aaron. What an interesting story and progression for Aaron. Whereas many guests are known as specialists, Aaron's career description has always been guy who can just get things done. That may mean writing code, designing websites, or even project managing the development of a mobile app. Aaron has been in business development. He's also been a voiceover actor for AM radio commercials, and he's spoken at some of the greatest marketing conferences all over the world. So often I hear the term generalist being applied to people who can do many things and do them well. So before we finish up this podcast, I wanted to talk about the term generalist and how it can be applied as a label to people who can do many things and maybe do them well, maybe not. I think that a lot of times the term generalist gets a negative connotation. The reason why it gets the negative connotation is because people think that you're a jack of all trade and master of none. But that's not the case with Aaron. That's not the case with somebody who can do a lot of things. Basically, being a generalist is really the key to us having successful careers because we can do a lot of things and make it work. And so being a generalist doesn't have to be a bad thing. And so that's why I was so excited to hear from Aaron, because he proves that being somebody who can do many things can be a valid path to success. We can specialize in a specific platform, or we can specialize in just getting things done. Both can be great options for your career, and I hope that you all take note of that and that you can do many things. The key is, as Aaron said in his interview, do you want to be remarkable or do you want to be replaceable? So for show notes, visit Jeffalytics.com/Weiche.
Remember good old times when the Facebook, Twitter offered authenticity. HTML code was written on a typewriter. For biggest challenges in life, just trust your gut. Apply simplicity. Go to bed smart and wake up stupid. You're a fighter.